Stream. All right. Yes. Okay. We are totally live. Let's do this.
Cool. You want me to start with the intro?
Please.
All right, cool. Hello and welcome to Movie Buffs. This is a show that covers the best action films of all time. I'm your host, Cisco, aka Misfit Minded. You can find me on Twitter at rampage_misfit, and my movie page is at misfit_minded on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And I'm your other host, Shani B. You can find me on all the socials at Shani B Movies.
And today we're talking about the Creed franchise. If you haven't seen it, the overarching story is about Apollo Creed's youngest son, Adonis, bastard son, you might say, and we'll talk about it and his journey towards becoming a world champion boxer. Um, so yeah, are you a fan of this movie, Shetty B? What do you love? What do you hate?
Ooh, I kind of like the term Fanny B, and I think I might use
Fanny
it
B.
if I really do like a movie. So I can't say that I'm a Fanny B of this whole franchise per se, but I will say I'm
Okay, all right,
definitely
spill it. Spill
Yeah,
it.
I'm definitely a Fanny B of the first film, and I think parts of the third film were interesting, and I definitely think there were parts of the second film that were interesting. It's just I didn't really like 2 that much, didn't really like 3 that much, but number 1
Yeah.
cannot be denied as just so good. So, this franchise and I, we have a complicated relationship. What about
Mm,
you?
it's more of like a situationship,
Yes, that's a great way to put it. What
as the
about
kids
you?
call it these days.
Yeah,
I like this franchise. I agree with you that the third one, which we won't spoil at the top of the show, but we'll get into that. But like,
for
is the
sure.
weakest of the three. I rewatched two, and I do like it. I think I hadn't seen it since the theater, and I don't remember liking it that much. But I thought it held up a lot better than I expected it to.
Okay.
And we can talk more about the specifics about that too soon. But I mean, yeah, definitely the first one is the best. No contest for me there. Ryan Coogler and Michael B. Jordan are like a dream team. Anytime they do a movie together, whether it's Black Panther or Fruitvale Station or
Mm,
Creed, they're always great together. Like they just have that like some director actor chemistry. And he really like from what I remember, I didn't have a lot of time to like get into the weeds of special features and everything, but I do remember when the first Creed came out that Coogler was saying that like he had this idea to bring Creed back. Like he had this idea for not necessarily a franchise, but just like this nugget of what if Creed's son, grew up and wanted to be a boxer.
mhm.
And it's such a smart idea. I'll cut out there for a second.
Yep,
It's
no
so
worries.
simple. It's so simple, but it's like it's so genius. It's like it's just what Rocky was like back in the 70s. Like it was like, okay, it's an underdog story where this guy meets a girl and then he he works his way up the ranks, doesn't become champion, but proves in the end that that he is somebody.
Yes.
And Creed, I felt like what I love about Michael B. Jordan as Creed, and I think we'll agree on, is that from the first movie through the third one, you kind of see the transformation from like in the first one in particular, he is just like this uncaged like animal. Like he's like wants to like punch everybody and
Yes.
fight everybody, and he is like
Yes.
so unleashed and like out of control. And it takes Rocky and their relationship to kind of like tame him and like you know
Mhm.
what I mean, and not tame him, but like use it in a constructive way through boxing, through sports.
Yeah.
And then the second and third one, I think I love how his relationship with like his girlfriend played by Tessa Thompson like develops and they have a baby, and like I thought that was some of the more like through some of the flaws of 2 and 3, I think those are like the strongest parts. And 2, when she's pregnant and they're kind of like talking about what if the baby's deaf, and that whole storyline, it's really memorable for me and like hard hitting. And so I did remember that from my first time watching that. And then the third one, she's a little bit more grown up. It's like years later, and then but you're still seeing like the effects of like is there a question mark of is there going to be a third generation Creed boxer potentially? You don't know. So yeah, that's
It's
just
true.
my first thoughts of Creed franchise. I know it was like all over the place, but
No, no, that's a great assessment of it because I think that is part of what makes this franchise so complicated for me is it has so much going on and it's only 3 movies. The source material
yeah.
is like 12 movies. I mean, not literally, but the source material is a rich tapestry of a full world with so much in it. And I really feel like the first film set them up to do something similar. So my qualms with number 2 are really that it feels like 2 movies shoved into one, where I'm not really allowed to catch the vibe of either of these movies for too long before I have to kind of go back to the paint by numbers of the overarching story, which just kind of feels cheap, especially by the third one. It's like
Mhm.
we lost the heart because we started finding a more dramatic, grounded story around Adonis, but he was like always straddling, am I doing the story about how I feel about my father, or am I doing a story about myself for reals in my own life, you know?
Well, I think having just rewatched 2, uh, that was, like, one of the things I liked about 2 was that it did become about, like, his own self journey and, like, coming to terms with his dad's passing, which, like, like, I wish always that there was more Sylvester Stallone, and Rocky,
Mhm.
but, like, I do like that they kinda gave him that space to, like, work things out, and, like, there's that scene and Michael B. Jordan is like such a great non-verbal actor, like just like being able to like tell what he's thinking or what he's feeling without him having to say anything. So like that scene where he like is underwater and like I love like the mirroring too because in the first one he does the Muhammad Ali like underwater boxing, right? And then in the
Mhm.
second one he goes underwater again, but then this time he's like kind of rock bottom because he just lost. Well, like technically one, like we'll talk about that, but he just does not feel like he's a champion or whatever. Like he like there's this void inside of him, and then he just like screams underwater. And there's
Mhm.
like a couple moments like that where I'm just like I like the emotional depths that they get into, or even when he like has to babysit his kid and he takes her to the gym while he like can punch the bag and like get his emotions out that way. And so it's like, all these movies from Rocky to Creed, they're all based around the same toxic masculinity and machismo and just basic guy shit about, regret and getting over it and not being able to process our trauma and our, all this stuff. And so I do like that it's in each of the movies, it's kind of handled in different ways. And then the third one, it's his trauma literally comes back to haunt him, which is like his best friend, Damien, played by Jonathan Majors, who I thought was like really great, like the pretty much the
Epic.
standout of the third movie, where similar to Michael B. Jordan, where like just from the first scene where he's like leaning on the car and like you're just like, ooh, this guy is like up to no good. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
this guy has something up his sleeve. Even though like he's not, blowing up at him immediately. It's like this guy's been in prison for like I think they said like 15 years or something, and
18. I think he said
18 years.
18. Yeah.
So it's like, what does that do to a person who's been like kind of plotting for God knows how much of that time? And um, yeah, I think where the third one kind of falters compared to the other two is definitely Michael B. Jordan being the director. Unfortunately, like Rocky, Sylvester Stallone directed the first, or not directed, but he wrote the first Rocky, and then he directed some of the sequels.
Yep.
And so that can go wrong. Like Sylvester Stallone's kind of like the exception to the rule, but like I just think like a technical boxing movie, um, it takes so much to make it look real, to ground it in reality, and I think it was like a little too much to ask of Michael B. Jordan to kind of Holden. I'm sure he's learned, he's picked up a bunch of stuff. Like it was serviceable. It wasn't like horrible, but like I watched those first two movies when I rewatched them, and it's like the one take in the first one where it's just like, going around the fighters and like then like going in when they're close up and then pushing back out and like and then going to their corner when it's done.
Mhm.
Like that is amazing to me. Like that is like every time works. And then in the second one too, like kind of like how they frame like the viciousness of Drago's son being this like taller, faster, stronger fighter, kind of like how they did in Rocky 4. And I just
Yeah.
felt like what was the distinguishing camera work or thing about Damien and Creed in the third? Like I guess that he's kind of like a cheater a little bit, like he kind of like plays
I guess
dirty, but like just visually he didn't do enough to like distinguish his fighting scenes as a director compared to the other two. I feel like,
well,
I don't know
I
if you
feel like
agree.
I guess I agree with you in the artistic sense, but I feel like he did try. It just really looked marvelified to me.
Oh
You
my
know,
god, I
he
know.
was like freezing, he was slowing the frame rate to be like, I am observing a body while I box, and I'm like, that is crazy. That's not been a part of the way he's
Yeah,
boxed this entire time. At the end, there was like fog,
the
around them, and I was just sort of
CGI.
like, what's happening? Why are we
Yeah,
I guess, like, I know why. We're getting influenced just by, like, other directors and their ability to bring these things in, but to still stay grounded. So it just kinda felt like having 3 different visions across these movies is a unique thing to look back on because I'm curious about each of the intentions there, and I think each director still executes. Like, Michael B. Jordan is telling Adonis's story independent of his history with his father, and I think having a new director who sees the career differently in that way is pretty beneficial. I guess I'm just, like, old school about it. I want the Rocky through line of, like, it's about heroes,
yeah.
it's about overcoming one's machismo to realize that, like, we're all brothers in this and we all fight for our hearts. Like, the
Yeah,
sad boy fighter boy is one of my favorite boys, and I feel like we
it's
don't really get to
you're a
come all the
Fanny
way
B of
around
them.
on it.
You're a
I'm a
fan of B of
huge
this.
Fanny B of sad boy fighters. Huge. But,
Yeah, I
like,
mean,
we don't really
yeah, go
get
ahead.
to have that heroic kind of turn for Jonathan Majors because instead we sort of paint him as a dude who's become bad. Like,
Yeah,
ultimately, he didn't go overboard when he defends Adonis. When we finally see what happened there, it's not like he was, like, truly a maniacal kid or something. He just literally wrong place, wrong time, kinda had a record that you can't really avoid, and the system is really what happened to him, and we didn't really actually get to focus on that in a meaningful way because he was instead, like, pulling, Tanya Harding style tricks to make sure he could get his way, and I was just like, "No, just be like the best fighter anyone's ever seen in prison. Be like the champion of the prison league so that when you come out, everyone is like, 'This guy got a raw deal by being stuck in jail. He's here, and everybody should be scared.'" That's what I
mhm,
was hoping for. It made me sad that Jonathan Majors was, like, a bad guy.
yeah. No, it's a good point, and I if I did have one, nitpick of, like, the first movie and the third, I guess, is, like, we never got to see Majors or, the champ. I can't remember the guy's name, and the bad guy in the first one, the heavyweight champion. Um,
Me neither, shit.
yeah, but both of them, there's, like, this subplot of, like, them in prison. Like, in the first one, he's going to prison,
That's
and then in
right.
the third one, he just got out of prison. Neither movie shows them in prison or, like, kind of deals with the consequences of that, and I'm prison is, like, such a like, it ties into what we're talking about of, like, masculinity and,
Yes.
like, uh, processing our trauma and through violence and all this other stuff, and it's like,
Yep.
oh god, I felt like those are just missed opportunities, like, to show that, so I don't understand why neither of them, really dealt with that. I don't know, it was weird.
Well, I guess like that's the issue sort of about how it works when the franchise has enough in it to stretch more, but we can't really just count on being able to have 5 movies to close out this entire thing to really spread out these characters. And so I think number 2 does a good job of stuffing as much information and movement and growth as possible in. I just feel like movies 2 and 3 are in number 2, and number 4 is what we actually saw. Like, we needed the full
Mm,
closure to come at the very end because I think in a lot of ways, this movie showed us that maybe Adonis wasn't ever really fighting just because he was conflicted about his relationship with his dad. Like, maybe he wanted to be the champ always because of this relationship with his brother. And so I'm
mm.
torn because while that is also still connected to the original franchise, it's the new story that just like fucking Halloween 3 did, should have happened in another order.
um, do we talk about 3 yet, or do we hold off? Because I
I mean,
have thoughts about
let's talk about 1 and 2 a little bit more because
Okay.
I feel like Coogler rewatching number 1 was the best part of this assignment.
Oh, yeah.
Just his
Always.
filmmaking is so good, and obviously he was able to bring that kind of artistry to the Marvel universe, but it sort of like made me really hungry for more just grounded, authentic storytelling from him. And so I think that's also why number 2 was awkward because I was like so excited, getting jazzed on those training montages, feeling the vibes of the original IP. And so I feel like number 1 just goes down in history. I've it's a rewatchable for me all the time.
Mhm.
I don't know. What do
Yeah.
you think? What parts of 1 do you really, like, latch onto?
I mean, where where do we start? I mean, I talked about the Oner, which isn't even in, like, the final fight, like, that's, like, in one of the, like, first couple fights that I guess, like, the first professional fight
Yeah,
that
the
Creed has.
initial Mhm.
Yeah, which is amazing. Of course, the what do you ATV like motorbike scene where he's like like the recreation of the Rocky running up the steps
That's the
scene with
one.
Meek Mill playing in the background. Like, if you don't think that's cinema, like, come on now, like that. And the fact that I was trying to pay attention to this because I think I heard someone say it, that they hold off on playing the Rocky theme until that moment, which is like very late in the movie. Like, it's like
Yes.
probably like an hour plus into the movie. Do not play the Rocky. They play like little hints of it, like the piano, like
Mhm.
the opening couple of like notes, but they never like go full on. And then when he, finally is like embracing the community and not just pushing everybody away. And then that's when the music kicks in. It's such a beautiful like moment. I love that. Love that scene.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly, that's the stuff that gets me, like, hella in my feels because that is the
Yeah.
Rocky through line of the heart of sort of like, this isn't just about you when you're, like, the champ, you have a city on your back, you have a people on your back, you do it for them, and I think that's the weird uh, tightrope that Adonis is kind of walking is that like he really does have a personal story and reason for being who he is, and it isn't just tied to the universe that Rocky lives in, where it can be a little bit more bare knuckle. It's kind of a heightened style story, and it's a different kind of relationship to the fighting, which I think is interesting. And in history, I think will be like what makes this franchise super memorable overall.
I mean, it definitely has a lot tied to, like, nostalgia and Rocky, like, so it would be interesting. Yeah, like you said, it would be interesting to see, like, someone that has only seen the Creed movies and if they, like, work as well, because, like, especially 2, it's like, if you didn't see Rocky 4 and you go into 2, I feel like there's gonna be some, like, stuff lost in translation. Like, you'd
Yes.
be like, "Wait, why is Brigitte Nielsen in this?" And, like
So good. I love that she's there. But yeah,
I
that's
do love that
true.
too.
That is also what has me torn about wanting so much of the IP to be reflected in the reboots, but then also knowing that that means there's extra homework for any viewer, and I can't be like, "Hey, go back in time and watch all of these movies so you can enjoy this to the full extent." Like,
And
that's not
Rocky
fair.
Rocky in particular, like there's what, 6 Rocky films and then now 3 Creed. That's 9 movies.
It's
That's this
awesome.
franchise has 9 movies now, so it's getting up there with like some of the other ones that some of the other franchises.
And like you
Um,
said, it's not like they're not planting enough of a seed to make sure that if they wanted to come back, they could. So,
mhm.
yeah, I guess it's been effective enough. It has high ratings. All three films have over a 7-point rating on IMDb, and they're all on for Google users over 90%. They all have high Rotten Tomato scores too. So it's like people did like these movies, and so did I. I guess I'm just really starting to feel the fatigue of how IP can get in the way of just taking something as it is, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, Creed 3 and I guess Scream 6, I kind of felt very similar to, where it's just like, how many more times can we keep doing this, guys? Like, I
Seriously,
love you
especially
guys. I love
yeah,
Ghostface. I love Rocky. I love Adonis, but it's just like the whole like uh we know what's gonna happen pretty much. I feel like before you sit down and some people don't care about that stuff, but it's just like um I don't want to spoil Creed 3, but it's just like there was like a chance, I guess, to like subvert some of the storytelling there, and I felt like they really
yes.
played it safe.
Yeah,
And stuff we've seen in 100 boxing movies and 100 action movies. And then
exactly.
Scream 6, like kind of similar vibes. Like I don't mean to drag that into this too, but just like if you've seen the first 5 Screams, there's nothing in Scream 6 that's really going to surprise you.
No,
Maybe a few
no.
things, but like overall, no. Like it's very beholden to what came before it. Um,
Exactly.
so
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why it's kind of a little too paint by numbers for me in terms of just checking boxes to make sure that we've like done this, this, and this to honor the IP and also to like make sure we're telling a full story here. But to your point about Michael B, like I don't need the weird a lot of the dialogue in this is problematic to me. It like doesn't sound like things people would really say. And I just
Okay.
wish
Like
that there
what?
was less well, there's just like talking over moments that again could just be tension between actors or scene partners. Um, I'm thinking, I guess no, I can't bring a certain scene up because it's a spoiler, but uh
Yeah.
a good example of when it works so well is the scene between Tessa Thompson and Jonathan Majors at the launch party for the album
Oh
is
yeah.
like
That was
maybe the
good.
best writing of 2 and 3 combined, in my opinion. Because a lot of the writing in 2 is, like, very flat just because they're mostly just looking at each other and hanging out, and that sells all of it for me. It's like
Mhm.
the story doesn't really feel like it's something that gets to be on the ground any more than the performances can make it, and I guess I just want more all the time. That's me, though. I just always want more.
I thought in 2 though, the fatherhood theme was really effective, like, because you had, Apollo dealing with his father,
Mhm.
or Adonis, I'm sorry,
Oh, right,
dealing
right.
with his father, Apollo, which he gets to have a conversation with at the end, which I thought was a really nice ending. And then you have him, like, dealing with, like, kind of Rocky, I guess, as a pseudo father figure, two at the same time. You have Rocky dealing with his son
Mhm.
and trying to reach out to him, and then you have Drago and his son. So it's just like the parallels there between those 3, 4 relationships. I thought like tied up like very nicely, and the fact that Drago throws in the towel with his son, which is like what Rocky didn't do in Rocky 4, or when Apollo died, it was just like, oh
Totally.
god, I forgot. This is like so they're definitely thinking of like the previous entries, and it's like again because I'm such a fanboy, a fanny bee of these movies,
Yes.
if you will, like all that stuff like really worked for me. And like then I'm trying to think like the moment where um Drago, basically like hugs his son and is like it's okay after being like so hard on him the whole movie. It's like God, so good. Like Dolph Lundgren, great actor.
Yeah, I guess that's exactly it, is that, like, the performances are more powerful because all that stuff that you said, I really appreciated, I just also knew was coming, or it should be there,
Mm,
if that makes sense. Like, they did everything correct, which I appreciate, but for number 3 to be ready to go so far outside, I kind of was like, "Oh, man, it was too tight. You squeezed it all into this one movie. You absolutely squeezed it perfectly for me, for sure, but you still squeezed it, and I want more. I want you to really, like, pay all the service. Like, I need Carl Weathers in a full scene with you. I need you to fully,
Ghost
like,
Dad?
yeah, they're gonna bring back Harold Ramis full CG as a non-existent human being, but
No,
Carl Weathers can't
no,
come through here one time,
no.
even if he's
I
just like
boycott it.
I just love Carl Weathers so goddamn much. He's one of my
I
favorite
do
guys,
too.
but, like, it just felt kind of like they did
Mandalorian,
such a good job of tapping all that
killing it.
IP in number yeah, hell yeah. Um, in number 2, and I guess, like, number 3 just, like, being so far away so quickly was just jarring for me, like, just
Mhm.
as a fan, pretty jarring, but you're right, all that stuff, it needs to be there, and I think in time, that's what I'll be most grateful for, that they didn't lose or act as though they were making a franchise that was outside of an original IP.
I mean, I do agree with you, like, on that about the jarringness of it, especially, like, at the beginning of 3, and this is not a spoiler, it happens at the beginning, but he fights the guy he beat at the end of Creed 1, like, and they, like, just skip past that, and, like,
So fast.
I had forgotten that until I rewatched, and I was like, "Whoa," like, they don't really establish that at all, like, for people again, that people that haven't seen it.
Mhm.
I just thought of another scene too, though, like, again, little dialogue, minimal dialogue, uh, excellent delivery, is when in the first movie, just kills me every time, when, Adonis and his girl have their first fight because he punched out the headliner at her show
Yes.
because nobody calls me baby Creed.
That's right.
and and she basically shuts the door in his face, and he's like trying to plead with her, and then he just like kind of like whisper talk, like says like I need you right now or whatever. It's just like
Right? I love my
he's
sad boys.
trying. He's trying his best.
It's true, it's true.
This is how he shows his vulnerability through his fists. It's just
Oh.
he knows no other way.
It's true. It's still opening the dialogue, and that will never be that will never not be valuable. So I appreciate, I think, what Michael B. Jordan did to just like keep this vibe alive. Because, what other movies about boxing are actually ones that get people's eyes? Like boxing movies kind of come and go nowadays, or they're like a biopic about a real boxer. So we turn in for that. But like this one is from an original story. So in a way, it's telling something that's unique, and we don't really get any kind of franchise where I'm like, "Oh, Southpaw 2, let's go." You know what I mean? I'm
I
so
will
sorry,
say though,
but
I love a boxing movie. Like I feel
er,
like I was gonna ask you about this too. So I guess we can have this conversation now. But I think it's the perfect sport. Sports movies in general are great because they open up all these conversations. They're never really about the sports,
of
even though
course.
the sports are in there.
Yep.
It's about many other things that we've talked about already. But like I think boxing in particular, just like I was trying to think about it. It's like the expression like having someone in your corner. That's boxing. Like you literally
Yes.
have Rocky in your corner. And I love those scenes in the first one where it's just like in between the rounds where Rocky's like giving them like little tips of advice. And it's
Yep.
just like that's great. That's exposition through action. Love that. And then just like the metaphor of life, like getting knocked down, getting knocked on your ass,
Being
and then you have to
resilient.
get back up and do it the next day. Like
Mhm.
that's to me, that's why boxing is always like an effective device in any movie. So like Southpaw, like that movie crushed me when I saw that.
Oh.
Uh, um, I love the Rocky movies, obviously. Raging Bull is a classic. Like
Oh, that
there's a
was
lot of
so good.
there's a lot of visual references too in the first Creed to Raging Bull, which I don't know if I noticed I probably hadn't seen Raging Bull back when that movie
But
came out.
it makes
But
sense
like,
because it's trying to confront a similar kind of character versus like he's definitely not just like a copy. He's not Baby Creed. So I guess I
yeah,
kind of understand why he's like, "Hey." Um, but yeah, exactly.
yeah, like the wiping the blood off the floor, like when he's doing those quick cuts. That
Mhm.
to me was like, oh, this is definitely like Raging Bull, like wiping the blood off the floor, stitching up the cuts,
Mm.
all those like little very quick. And then like I think there's like one too where it's just like very it's like the camera's close up on him while he's getting like punched out.
Mhm.
That's Raging Bull. Like Scorsese
All
invented
the
that.
way. Mm.
I have to
All the
give
way.
credit. Yeah.
I mean, that's
Um
what I love. I love that when regardless of, like, what you're doing, original IP or not, that when there's, like, a genre that you can explore, that there are people who came before you that gave you a lot to play with, and I think, like, that is something I really appreciate in the first film, but, because a lot of movies have sort of turned into something a little bit more hyped up and a little bit more fantastical and, like, Marvel-y in a way, I think it just didn't really work for me. I didn't love the influences that came into the final film, even though I
Creed
did
3.
like a few. Yeah. Yeah, like there were a
Yeah, it's
few
like
pieces where I
I
was
was
like,
just
"Oh, that's cool." But most of it I was like, "Ah, this really just feels it doesn't feel on the ground the way the other ones did."
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I definitely felt that way, like, several moments, don't wanna spoil it. But, yeah, I was gonna say it felt like Jonathan Majors, like, took the CGI from him as Kang and then, like, brought it on set to Creed 3. Like,
Yes.
it was, like, very off-putting at some points because it's just, like, it kind of, like, reaffirmed for me that, like, what makes a boxing scene/movie slash movie great is, like, the groundedness in that you feel like you're in the ring, you feel like you're getting punched out yourself, and then
Yes.
if you get taken out of that, it's like very hard to care about. Like it just feels like two, like you said, Marvel-y superheroes punching each other, and it's like, why should I give a shit about this?
Yes, yes,
So yeah,
exactly. We were just talking about how in John Wick, there's like a relentless amount of violence, but there is an emotional core and a through line that is valuable enough to justify the superhuman strength of this guy and the violence. And we were just looking for a version of that in the Creed franchise. I think in the third one, where I just thought there was it was so perfect to return to a space of like his childhood because I forgot that the first Creed really started with
hmm,
him being a kid just all by himself
very
before
quick,
Marianne
but
comes and
yeah,
gets him. Yeah, like I totally forgot about that. So seeing that and then trying to connect it all the way through the third film, I just wanted there to be like I wanted to geek out and in that final fight I wanted to see every location that he had to fight in before he got to being a boxer. I wanted to see him and Jonathan Majors like going at each other and then facing outside back to back fighting the world together. Like I wanted the hero's journey all the way through. And I just feel like that's a lot to ask of a franchise that kind of has to juggle two worlds. And I don't know, I
yeah,
just felt like that I don't think that's like a huge spoiler necessarily, but I just feel like
no.
that is where I have to that's where I'm like, "Damn, this is 2 franchises in 1. Why? Why?"
Well, I think it's because uh, Rocky has more side characters that you care about compared to Creed. Like
Yeah.
you had Mickey, and then you had Apollo, who like what started off as an opponent, but then became like his friend through the
Mhm.
movies, and his trainer in Rocky 2. Um, Adrian, like, and so like I guess they have that romantic relationship in these, which is like probably a little bit better and like more grounded, which I appreciate. Where
Yeah,
like
and she
she's
gets to
not
do a
like,
lot.
yeah, because like Adrian, like especially in like the later entries, it's just like screaming at him, like, "Why are you still doing this?" And it's
It's true.
which is like it's like fair, but also like you can have an adult conversation about these things like they do in the Creed movies, and it's like I definitely appreciate how she like approaches him, where it's just like she says that, like literally says that, like, why do you feel like you have to fight
Yeah.
Drago's son again? But she's like very calm about it. She lets him make his own choices. She doesn't like
Yeah.
step in the way or like giving him ultimatum or something like that. Like, so I think that's one thing I'll give the Creed franchise, that they do very well with their relationship.
Well, they also just give her a more grounded kind of character overall, you know, like she too is
Yeah,
on an overarching journey where the thing like her dream is a part of this franchise in a way that Adrian doesn't like have a dream in the Rocky
right.
franchise. So
To be
I
Rocky's wife is her dream.
exactly, to have a happy small life. But that's what I love about this franchise too, is that like the women in it are tried to we try to look at them slightly different, minus Brigitte Nielsen, of course, but we do look at, you know, the matriarch of the family now as like someone giving guidance the way that we were first kind of getting from Sly. We move into that with Marianne in the third film, and just the way he and Tessa Thompson, they respect each other across the board. They hear one another out when they're making all decisions and choices, and they like hold the nerve-wracking tension space of like we have to talk about something hard but we love each other so we're gonna do it. They're just so
Mhm.
good. Their chemistry together is also something I love so much regardless of everything else. Like they are really listening and talking to each other when they work together, and I'll miss that for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I accept, and then like we said in 2, like when he like stops communicating with her, like that's a whole arc where like, and then she like talks to his mom, and she's like, you just have to let he's rotting like from the inside out. You have to let him deal with it his own way, and then she gives him space, and he deals with that way. So yeah, I like you said, I like the relationship, and then the relationship he has with Rocky too. I feel like that's probably the best of the two franchises coming together, where
Mm,
it's like, Apollo is kind of like looming, and you have like, the son of Apollo's trainer is like in some of the movies, but it's not connected that much until you get Rocky in the mix.
yep.
And their relationship is like, I like watching them on screen together. I think it's like really well done. It's emotional. It's funny. All the times when he calls him Unc, like
Yes.
especially in the first one, which I forgot.
Yeah.
That he just calls him Unc. He doesn't call him Rocky or anything like that. He's like, "What's up, Unc?"
So good.
I think
Mhm.
it's hilarious, and like just like the little jokes, and the training too. Like, him being the new Mickey.
Mhm.
Um, when we talk about like, requels or reboots, like that's just like the classic. The trainee becomes the trainer in the reboot or whatever.
Yeah.
So they did that in Cobra Kai, where Daniel's son had to become the leader of Miyagi Do because, obviously, Pat Morita is not alive around anymore. But I think they both franchises do that very well.
Yeah.
It's not just like shoehorned in there. Like they take time. Rocky doesn't want to do it at first, probably because he's afraid. He doesn't want to be responsible for two deaths.
Right.
That's and then Creed comes in like hot, like hard headed, won't listen to anybody, and then it takes Rocky to like be like, hey, I have experience with this, I know what you're going through. And then I forget that he loses that first fight too in the first Creed movie. I always forget that.
I guess, like,
But
that's what they kind of do across the board is in the first 2 movies, they really do follow the mold of the movies that
of
they're
the
modeled
first,
after. Like,
yes,
that
yep,
one number 1 is after 1 and number 2 is after 4, but they follow those molds pretty
yeah,
well, and I think, like, that's what gets weird about 3 is that there's not quite a mold for them to follow. They had to make their own there,
yeah.
but
I guess
I
they
just
tried to
wish they
make
did the same.
Damien Mr. T, I guess you could say. He was like the big bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Like
I
the
guess.
over the top villain, I guess. I don't know. That's the only thing
No,
I can
for
think
sure.
of.
I mean, the look, when you said that, I was like, yes, the look he's wearing is like is updated Mr. T. And also, God, I love Mr. T so much. But yeah, I feel like
Same.
because they had done such a good job of doing the perfect next generation mirror, I guess I was hoping we were just going to continue that in some way in 3, and maybe we did, but I think I am still satisfied with the overarching realization that this wasn't really ever about just his relationship to his dad. It's like how all problems are when you're a full adult and you're like, I'm just mad because this one thing went wrong in my life. And then you grow up and you're like, oh no, a lot of things didn't go the way I wanted. So it's not just this one thing. It's like,
Yeah.
actually, when I was a kid, this other thing happened to me, and that was underneath all of this. And I think number three actually does a great job of that kind of grounded storytelling, of that, like, we're not defined by one thing that happens in our past. There's like a few in
Right.
there that usually just work together. And so I like that departure, if that makes sense.
No, for sure, and I would say that's where I would give Rocky franchise the edge for sure, is memorable villains. I wouldn't say literally any of the Creed, villains are that memorable. Maybe Damien in Creed 3 is the most memorable because he has the most lines, the most story.
Most
Jonathan Majors
villainous.
is yeah, great actor, but, I mean, even, like, talking about Mr. T, like, I can never forget, like, literally the impetus for them fighting is just Mr. T, like, talking shit to Adrian, like, "Come here and I'll show you a real man, woman." Like, it's just like, "Whoa!" Like, and you want Rocky to kick his ass, like, right there.
Yes.
But it's like you really don't. It's almost, I think that's kind of where the groundedness is a little too much to the ground in the Creed ones, where it's just like we
Yep.
can get villains chewing some scenery. Everyone, I mean, even I don't even think that's unrealistic. I mean, you see, you see guys like Jake Paul and like
I
these
mean,
like
that's
boxer
true.
and Conor McGregor, and they're so out of control. They're trolls. It's
Mhm.
like I feel like if they do a Creed 4, which they possibly could, I feel like they should follow. If we're gonna follow the mold, Rocky 4 has the most like over the top villain in Drago and Ivan Drago as like the Terminator, like this robotic Russian. Why don't we get like one of the Mr. T, Hulk Hogan, Thunderlips,
Yes.
villain
I totally
in
agree.
yeah,
Because
we need to
because
do that.
well, I feel like that is definitely part of it too, is that you have to kinda choose which way you're gonna go here. Are you gonna keep the showmanship of what also Apollo Creed was, like, really good at fitting into, or not? And I feel like this movie chose to not have the salesmanship and the showmanship, but that's what's also kind of weird about 2, is, like, that guy who wants to put the Drago fight together, he's sort of saying, like, "Hey,
That
it's
was
all a
weird.
show."
That
And I'm like,
was
"No, not in
yeah.
this franchise." Like, in this franchise, it's been more about, like, actual heart, actual moral honor, character, and I guess that is also what's missing, is that, like, I do sometimes wish that even he was, like, a little bit more of a showman, so that we weren't just getting, like, the name
Yeah.
and the fighting
Sad boys.
skills, that, like, yeah, we might
And
also
sad
get
boys.
a showboy, you know? I was hoping
Yeah.
for a little more of that, but that's also okay, like, the distinguishing factors are both the strengths and weaknesses for me just as a fan.
Especially because Apollo was a showman, like,
Yes,
and like,
exactly.
came out in the Stars and Stripes and the top
Yes,
hat and
my
James
favorite
Brown.
shit.
Yeah,
Exactly, what
and
I
so
live
it's like
for.
there was a part in it might have been, I think it was Creed 2 because that's what I just watched, where like Creed like comes out and it's just like kind of a light show, and the announcer is like, Adonis Creed, ever the showman. And I was like, what is showman about this? Like,
I don't see
there
a
is no,
spinning fireworks show like, when, Sly Goes Back and recuts Rocky 4, he, ramps up the showmanship that Carl
yeah,
Weathers put into that movie, and he also softens the villainy of Drago. Like, in
yeah. It
retrospect,
was
he wishes
weird.
he
It was a
didn't
weird,
use, yeah, that kind of
yeah,
model, and so I think that's, like, maybe where I'm torn again, is I both want the over the top showmanship, but I also love where they started and what Coogler, was able to do, pulling it to the ground in the open of this. So
yeah.
it's just hard to hold one vision for 3 movies over, like, what, like almost 10 years? 6, 8 years,
Mhm.
maybe?
Yeah, and I kind of have to like show my cards, I guess now, but like I'm a real life boxing fan as well. Um,
Nice.
so maybe that's why like I'm so invested and like nitpicky about this stuff too. Because, but like, I mean, one of my favorite fighters who is I think is retired now, Tyson Fury,
Okay.
amazing heavyweight boxer. Like that guy is like if he didn't have like an amazing like comeback story where he like lost like 200 pounds and like came back from like depression and like
Damn.
suicide, it's like, yeah, like if
Whew.
he would be a villain almost because he talks so much shit and like
I
he's
mean,
so cocky,
sometimes.
but he backs it up. Like he backs it up, and like there was, and he always does like these antics, and like one fight, for example, he knocked this dude out, and then he takes the microphone and sings like a karaoke. He sings Aerosmith to his wife in the crowd, and she comes up, and I'm like, this is so ridiculous. This is WWE levels. So
Yes.
you can do Creed franchise. You have permission. This happens in the sport of boxing. Like this stuff does happen.
Yes. Well, that's exactly it, is that again, there's two worlds being juggled here. The world of boxing as it exists, as we all know it to exist, and the emotional world of boxing that Sly Stallone created all those years back. That like there's room for both of those
Yeah.
spaces, which I just appreciate, I think, overall, because like you said, these movies and sports movies, they give us access to these important conversations. It's just that, like, sometimes I also just want to be totally goofy and zany and I want some bullshit at the same time. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess we can't have it all, right? We're not going to always get to have it all, but I feel like there's no way that this franchise, whether it's via a Rocky space or a Creed space or a Drago space, is over by any means.
Yeah. And I think too, like we're saying all this, but I think that also they're afraid of doing the Rocky 5, Rocky 6 route, where it's like too unrealistic,
That's
where it's
true.
like
That's true.
street fighting and Rocky old as hell, like going and fighting like a prime boxer. Like,
So good.
no, like we don't need that. We don't need
No.
that level of like unrealistic fighting, but like just a villain. Make the villain that element, and you can keep everything else grounded. That's all I want,
I
really.
mean, I'm optimistic that it'd be possible for us to get something else like this, that because we liked Rocky, because we liked Creed, that I think it'd be possible for there to be some kind of new original boxing icon for us to love the way we could love these characters. I just feel like that's why I'm saturated on the IP overall. That I love these three
Mhm.
movies, but like you said, there are 9 altogether, and you sometimes that means you need to do a lot of homework to enjoy.
Oh
I'm
yeah.
excited for some movie that seems like it could be a one-off, but then everyone is like, "This guy's the heart and soul. Let's keep going."
I think if Coogler came back, I would be a lot more excited because when 2 got
Yes.
announced and when 3 got announced, that was the first thing I looked for, and both times I was bummed that he
Yep.
didn't direct it.
Same.
So if he came back, you know what's crazy? I was listening to a podcast, and I didn't think about this, that Coogler has not directed a non-Marvel movie since Creed. That was the
Really?
last. Yeah, his last 2 movies have been Wakanda Forever and Black Panther.
Oh, damn. I mean,
So it's like,
those are a lot of work. Like, that's like
I
some
know.
James Cameron action, getting stuck doing Avatar for 50 years.
So I just whatever he wants to do, but like if he had an interest in doing Creed again, I would love to see what he like comes. I mean, even we didn't talk about another scene I love in the first Creed is, I think, yeah, he's training. Um I want to say it's before the big fight, and it's like going 360 around him, like
Mhm.
as he's like hitting the pads, like over and over again. I'm like, damn, like this seems so complicated to choreograph.
But
Like,
still,
uh, yeah, but it's amazing. Like, and you know, you see that, and that puts you in the realism of the scene, or the verisimilitude, as they say in the film class or whatever.
but
That
yeah.
like you're in there, you're seeing Michael B. Jordan doing this stuff by himself. It's not cutting away. Um, a guy, I'm sure the guy behind the pads, I'm sure, is like a real life boxing coach or whatever. Like, they do have a lot of those things. Like, again, I watch
Authenticity.
boxing, so in the third one, they have one of my favorite fighters like helps Creed train, Terrence Crawford, which I appreciated that. And then
Let's
like
go.
the announcers are always like Max Kellerman is in the first couple, and Roy Jones Jr.
Yep.
The not like Michael Buffer is like, let's get ready to rumble. Like
Let's fucking
all that
go.
stuff helps, mix into this, like, yeah, like you feel like this could actually be a real life underdog story, which I think helps it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that they include the HBO and Showtime, like, boxing,
HBO.
TV
Yep.
stuff, like the shows that cover it, because I love all that sports, on those channels, and I've always liked that stuff, especially in the '90s, so I like that that was
Mhm.
there because I feel like it does try to bring in authenticity, and again, like, it's the double-edged sword of, like, if you're too authentic, then we can't play too much, and if we can't play too much, then my ADHD is gonna make me too bored. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was. It's just interesting that we had to wait so long. Because was this movie? Do you have any idea about if this movie was completed before the pandemic or during
COVID.
or like what? Yeah, like how did it? I guess I'm wondering how
I
much
think it
time was
was a
supposed
COVID
to.
movie, because
Okay.
if you look at some of those crowd scenes, like, when you're talking about CGI, like, that was like, oof. Like, it was
Oh,
some of
okay.
those were, like, kinda rough. So I wanna say, but, like, again, I didn't get to research it clearly enough, but, and then I also, like, I gotta show my cards again, Creed 3, that they have the Mexican fighter, that was
Baller.
dope to me,
Mhm.
because Mexican fighters are on top of the world right now. Canelo Alvarez, who's also in Creed 3, makes a
Yes.
cameo,
So dope.
is the champion, and,
And also there hadn't been any Latino fighters across the entire
so
franchise up
far,
until this. Yeah, like, what the fuck? That's
yeah,
insane.
so that was dope, and, like, the whole, like, Damien, like, trying to like, that stuff kind of, we can talk about Creed 3 now, I guess, a little
Yeah,
bit,
let's do it.
but,
Yeah,
like,
we're
him getting the title shot was so unrealistic, like, that would never happen,
I mean,
like,
that's why I
he
didn't love
never had a
how
fight before in his life, like, or, like,
yes.
in 18 years, and he just, like, automatically is, like, a heavyweight title contender, like,
Yeah, they're
no,
like, "The Golden
never would happen.
Gloves boxer." Yeah, when they were that's why I was thinking, like, their only choice because they didn't go the route of, like, he is in the prison boxing league, he is the champ in prison for
Why
years
didn't
and
they
years and
do
years.
that? That would have been so
They
dope.
That's why they had to go the villain route of, like, he needs to basically cheat to be good, which I was just like, "That's a disservice. Why does he have to cheat? He should literally
That was
just be
so
good."
dumb. I hated that.
Yeah,
I know I hated
yeah,
that.
exactly, like, such a not something that would have been part of this franchise, I think, before, so it was just a weird choice to me, especially because Jonathan Majors was, like, gutted, so ripped. Oh my god.
Oh,
I
man.
like,
It reminded
how does
me, I
he
told you beforehand, right? Tom Hardy in Warrior, was he not, like, that ripped
Yes.
in Creed 3?
And also, like, that sort of, like, gritty, grounded, like,
Yeah. Like, he'll kill
they
you. He'll kill you in
yes.
the ring.
Yeah, yeah, don't fuck with him, do not he's so sweet, he's got that charisma, he slides up on Tessa Thompson, but at the same time,
Yeah.
don't sleep on him because he's, like, waiting for you to look away.
Yeah, I think we're kinda hounding on Creed 3. I still would recommend you see it, like,
Yes.
for yourself, either in the theater, like, most recommended, but, like, it's also on VOD right now, but, like, just for Jonathan Majors' performance alone, he is,
Yes.
like, so electric, like, in all of his movies, like, it's, like, again, like, it's the balance of, like, scariness and, like, whether he's gonna, like, do something at any minute, like, that club scene, like, you're talking about, I was like,
Mhm.
Something's gonna happen. Something's gonna happen."
Yes,
Like,
yes,
you
and
could just
all
feel it because he's, like, eyeing the room, and, like, he
mhm.
sees Michael B. Jordan, like, mingling in the crowd, and you just see it on his face, like, "This is my life. Like, this should be my life." But he's, like, fake smiling through it all and being like, "Yeah, you big shot now." It's like, oh, that passive aggressiveness.
Yes, yes,
So
and
good.
him and sort of Tessa Thompson's characters being able to align with the idea that, like, you can have a dream, but you sometimes life gets in the way of that dream, and you've gotta
Mm,
find a way to overcome it, you gotta find a way to see your life or yourself and get through that and make changes, and I just feel like that kind of groundedness is something that Jonathan Majors, he man, he's so good. He's so good,
really is.
uh and yeah, so I feel like I just wish that his character was as good as he is and that he wasn't just, like, so good at playing a bad character like he'll always be if he
Yeah.
ever plays them.
And I will say what I think 3 suffered from, other than the direction, is no Sylvester Stallone. It was so weird. It was just like,
Yeah,
basically how, like, Apollo was, like, lingering, like, over Adonis in those first couple movies. It's
yep,
like they, like, offhand remark, like, but they don't say, like, where he is now or anything. It's just like, yeah,
No.
they're gonna I want us to talk about like how they talk about Rocky. That's it. That's
Yeah.
like the only line they give to him, and I'm like, that is so crazy. Like, and I know, like, very, like, I don't know this for a fact or whatever, but I know there was some like bad blood between like
Well, I had heard
Sylvester
that he didn't like the
Stallone and
story. Yeah, he didn't like the story or the direction they were gonna go, which I understand because, like, we're
yeah,
talking about it has a difference, but I agree, like, there still has to be room for you to find, like, a closure there, and what kinda sucks is, like, in number 2, at the end of the fight, like, they punch hands together, and
yeah,
Rocky does say to him, "It's your time now." So he sort of
yeah,
does do a send-off line, but when we're closing an entire franchise out, the hits all have to come back through,
yeah.
you can't just close it without
Well,
that stuff.
and by consequence, I thought like the best Michael B. Jordan stuff, uh, not like when he's by himself, is like with Rocky and then with Tessa Thompson, and then without Rocky being there as like his coach and father figure, Michael B. Jordan had to be that part, and I don't necessarily think he's great at that. Like he's just
No.
he's a different he's a movie star. You know what I mean? Like he's a different kind of actor. And so like to try have him play kind of like that, like yeah, that father figure, soulful kind of person, it just didn't work. And like they tried to make him seem like so old and washed in Creed 3. And I was like,
Yeah.
what is happening?
Yeah, you
They're
guys.
acting like this guy is like 70 years old. Like he's in better shape than like most people.
Yes. Yeah, being like he's
It
washed
was
up,
so
like
crazy.
it's true. It's true. They really stretched in a lot of ways in 3, which I think sometimes
Yeah.
worked well, but in other ways was a little meh. So, honestly, I'm just looking forward to getting some time in between, this franchise and me so that I can try to look back, and I'm really curious what people who are not necessarily married to the Rocky stuff do with this because they do
That's what I'm
enough
saying,
of a
yeah.
job to sort of say there is something in the background, but like plenty movies historically, they have backstories that exist in them that you don't that there weren't movies of that you didn't have to see. So
Yeah.
I'm most interested to see if this franchise can kind of stand up in that way going forward.
Yeah, and I will say, like, the stuff between Michael B. Jordan and his daughter in the 3rd one I thought was really cute, like, him dressing up as, like, a frog and, like, having a tea party with her was hilarious.
So
Like, and, like,
sweet.
funny that he would, like, be able to do that, you know what I mean?
It's true. Yeah, I liked that
And
the through line of him being there for his kid in a way that he wasn't able to have. But I guess, like, I didn't
mhm.
love that he was like, "It's cool that you also wanna punch everybody." I was
I
like,
know, I was
"Hey,
like, can we
that's
get
not
a
okay."
can one Creed do something besides hitting people?
Yeah, we
Like
need a Zen Creed to be like, "I never fight. I'm a full pacifist." But it was pretty
Oh
cute
god.
to sort of see them bonding and for that to come full circle, like you're saying, is like fathers and sons is definitely number 2, and number 3 is sort of like, well, who are you really gonna be? And that means going back to your past and checking all the stuff that makes you who you are that's outside of your family members, and then who you wanna be for the next generation of your family
Well,
members,
then
your
full
wife and
circle
kid.
too with Creed being in that like juvie in the first one and like and fighting everybody, and then like at the end his daughter wanting to fight too. It was like that's
Mhm.
another like layer to it. But like yeah, I felt like the dramatic stuff in Creed 3 was like mostly forced on like the mom and like his wife and Tessa Thompson, and it just was like like
Yeah.
I really didn't care. I'm sorry. I
Yeah, it
was
wasn't
just like
enough. Wasn't enough.
it wasn't enough. It could not
Mhm.
carry it past the finish line. I was just like, there's no stakes here. Like it really hinges on stakes. Like what are they
Yeah.
fighting for? I need to
Yes.
care about this person getting knocked out or knocked down or whatever. And I felt like really didn't establish those stakes very well.
Just not enough,
Um
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
yeah.
think overall, you and I, we align and we differ in the best ways that this franchise could ask for from its viewers, so I think overall it's still great. I'll definitely always be coming back, and I like that there are franchises to discuss. I like that there's more than one movie here, so I'm
Mhm.
glad we did this, and just glad we were back together again, so
I
yeah,
know.
let's plug in and let's get the hell out of here.
All right, yeah, you can follow the show at Action Movie Buffs so you never miss a moment of the action. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at rampage_misfit, and my movie page is at misfit_minded on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Shani B Movies. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast on Apple and Spotify, and also subscribe to YouTube because we'll be here live streaming when we speak together. So
Yeah.
please subscribe, smash that like button.
Do you know
smash
what
that
the
subscribe
what's
button.
the YouTube what's the YouTube channel tag name?
It should
Does that
just
say,
be
do you
at
know?
Shani B Movies right now because I
Shani B
don't have a
Movies? Okay.
separate. Yeah, so we're just right on Shani B Movies, but I'll put your link in the bio so that you can like both of our. You can subscribe to both of our YouTube channels for all the best Shani
Well, yeah, I
B
just wanna
and
make sure
Misfit
they know,
Minded
like,
content.
where to go for YouTube because, you know, if you type in Creed franchise, you know, you're probably not gonna find us.
There's probably be a lot of people. Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
So,
I'll definitely be posting it on all our social media like we always
yeah.
do. So
Okay, cool.
yeah, for sure. All right, cool. Do you want to give us the closeout?
Oh, yeah. Thanks again for listening. We'll catch you next time for another edition of Movie Buffs.
Yes. Awesome. All right, and bro.